Well, because I've been playing Resident Evil 2 for my Let's Plays, I've been falling behind on movie reviews. So let's get into some of the newer movies and hopefully get a few in before I go see Cold Pursuit tonight. So let's talk about The Prodigy first. The Prodigy is our newest evil child horror movie, but with a supernatural twist because he's actually possessed by a Hungarian serial killer. It's pretty crazy. The boy in question is Miles, and on the day he was born, or night he was born, a serial killer was killed. And because he was born and the serial killer was killed around the same time, somehow the serial killer's reincarnated soul got into Miles, and so there's a battle between the real Miles and the serial killer in his head. Now this battle gets very violent once Miles turns 8 and the serial killer tries to take over his mind. But our perspective is mainly from the mother and the parents as they try to figure out what's wrong with their son. Because at first they think maybe he's just a genius, but then weird things start happening around Miles, some supernatural things, some violent things, and maybe it's more of a mental disorder they think, but as they find out about halfway through the movie, no, he's possessed. And then the film is mostly the mother's desperate attempts to drive this serial killer out and save her son. Now, I didn't know too much about The Prodigy going into the movie. I hadn't heard too much about it, but thankfully, I thought it was decent. In fact, I thought it was mainly average, which could be disappointing to some, but you know what? We don't get too many evil child horror movies lately, and the fact that this one's R and the child is actually creepy and actually gets to say some really terrible stuff, it's got a little bit of an edge to it, which I admire. I think the acting, for the most part, is completely fine, especially from the creepy child. He actually has to do a lot in this movie. Sometimes he has to be Miles, sometimes he has to be the serial killer, sometimes he has to be the serial killer pretending to be Miles. And that's kind of difficult to do. I did like both of the parent characters, and I thought the acting for them was fairly decent, at least for a horror movie. There is a few memorable scenes in the movie and a few scenes that I wish weren't spoiled in the trailer because there was one interesting scare in the trailer, but unfortunately, once it actually happens in the movie, I'm expecting it because I saw it in the trailer. Everyone else in the movie theater freaked out and jumped, but I'm like, oh, I saw that coming. One scene in particular I really love, and I won't spoil it, is the time when this serial killer tries to manipulate and blackmail this hypnotist. You see it in the trailer. This person's trying to hypnotize Miles so he can speak to the serial killer possessing Miles. And that whole scene was great, and especially what the serial killer says in order to blackmail and manipulate this hypnotist. It's pretty bonkers and insane. For the most part, I thought the last half of the film was entertaining and enjoyable, especially once they find out that the serial killer is possessing Miles or that something is possessing Miles. Once that little idea happens in the movie or is given to the mother, that's when the movie starts picking up and it actually becomes the movie that we want to see. And it wasn't the fact that the first half of the movie was slow. I do like slow build-ups, especially for horror movies and suspenseful things, but there was no suspense or tension because, well, it would be one thing if we didn't know that the serial killer was in Miles' mind. If it just so happened that it seemed like he was a genius and we don't know what exactly is happening with Miles and that some weird things are happening here and there. If there was some mystery and suspense in this area, it would be completely fine as a slow-burning thriller. But unfortunately, within the first scene, we pretty much know exactly what's gonna happen. It's kind of like the possession of Hannah Grace, where In that movie, they gave away that there was an exorcism gone wrong and she is definitely possessed. In this one, they show as he's being born the serial killer dying, and so we as the audience can tell in very cheesy fashion that this guy dies and goes into the baby's body, basically. And it's very easy to tell, it's cheesily done, and I wish that wasn't in the movie. As a horror movie, it wasn't all that scary. Granted, I've seen so many horror movies over the years that I've sort of been desensitized to horror, so it takes a lot to scare me. But I usually get creeped out by creepy kids and evil kids, and this movie didn't do it for me. I do admire how unique it tries to be by having a sort of possession movie as well as an evil child movie. And in hindsight, it sounds like it could be the best of both of those things, but in practice of this movie, it does seem like it's just a lackluster version of both a possession movie and an evil child movie, neither of them being scary as they could be for those genres. In the end, I did kind of like The Prodigy. I thought it was a pretty decent horror movie, but only if you're a horror movie fan and you're a fan of those types of genres. For most of you, it's probably going to be either an average movie or a boring movie. So in the end, I'm going to give The Prodigy 2.5 stars. So, did you see The Prodigy? What'd you think about it? Go ahead and comment below. And if you like this video and you want to see more, please subscribe and check out my movie reviews or countdowns or my Let's Plays of this year, of last year, of other years, whatever. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My